The rain began as a drizzle and turned into a rhythmic, punishing downpour by the time the unmarked black sedan reached the jagged coastline of the Atlantic. Dominic sat in the back, his bruised throat throbbing with every breath, his hands finally free of the steel cuffs but still feeling the phantom weight of them. He was a fugitive from his own empire, a man whose name was being dragged through the mud on every news cycle from coast to coast. But as the sedan pulled onto the gravel path leading to the old lighthouse, a Skywalker family landmark that predated the Toretto Corleone fortune, something shifted in Dominic's chest. The turning point wasn't just a physical change of location. It was a psychological shedding of skin. For the first time in 20 years he didn't have a board to impress, a mistress to flaunt or a rival to crush. He was just a man going to see the woman who had known him before he became a monster. "This is as far as we go," the lead marshal said, the windshield wipers of the car fighting a losing battle against the storm. "You have 30 minutes. If the local police trackers pick up this car's GPS, we're all going to prison. Make it count, Toretto." Dominic stepped out into the gale. The wind nearly knocked him back, but he planted his feet, finding a reservoir of inner strength he thought he had traded for expensive cigars and leather-bound office chairs. He climbed the winding, salt-slicked stone steps of the lighthouse, his lungs burning. He reached the lantern room at the summit. The glass was reinforced, vibrating with the force of the thunder. And there, standing against the backdrop of the churning black ocean, was Elisa. She wasn't wearing the emerald silk of the gala. She was in a simple trench coat, her hair pulled back, her face pale but strikingly calm. She looked like the girl he had met at a university library 2 decades ago, the one who had seen a spark of greatness in a dockworker's son. "You came," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper, yet it cut through the roar of the storm like a blade. "I had to," Dominic said, stopping 10 feet away. "You destroyed everything, Elisa. My brother, my company, my freedom. Why the lighthouse? Why now?" "Because this is where it started, Dominic," she said, finally turning to face him. "And this is where the lie ends. I didn't destroy your company. You destroyed it the moment you let Cobb Miller-Ross use that steel. I just stopped covering the cracks." She stepped forward, the light from the rotating beacon sweeping over them, alternating between blinding white and absolute shadow. "I loved you enough to be your shield. But I won't be your accomplice. Not anymore. Not with a child involved." Dominic felt the sting of tears, real hot tears, mixing with the rainwater on his face. He realized the key to solving the conflict wasn't a legal document or a bribe. It was the truth. "I'm sorry," he choked out. The words felt like they were being torn from his throat. "Not for the money. Not for the company. I'm sorry I forgot who you were. I'm sorry I treated the only person who actually loved me like an obstacle to be managed." Elisa's expression didn't soften immediately, but the tension in her shoulders broke. She reached into her coat and pulled out a digital drive, the true ledger. "This is the key, Dominic. It contains the proof that the Foundation's orders were forged by Arthur and Cobb behind your back. It clears you of the criminal negligence, but it confirms the fraud of the company. You'll be broke and you'll probably serve time for the lesser charges, but you won't be a murderer. And you won't be a more Eddie target." Dominic looked at the drive, then at her. This was the reunion, a moment of deeper understanding born from total devastation. "Why save me at all?" he asked. "Because," she said, her voice trembling for the first time, "I need my child to know that their father was capable of being an honest man, even if he had to lose the world to find his soul. Now go. The marshals are waiting. Turn yourself in to the federal prosecutor directly. Don't go back to the city." As he took the drive, their fingers brushed. The spark was still there, a flicker of the attraction that had built an empire, now refined into something quieter and more resilient. Dominic realized that courage wasn't about winning. It was about the strength to lose everything and still stand tall. "I'll find you," Dominic promised. "When this is over. When I've paid the debt." "I'll be watching," Elisa said. "I'm always watching, Dom." He turned and ran back down the steps, the hope in his chest outshining the lightning in the sky. He had a path to redemption. He had a reason to fight. And for the first time in his life he was doing it for something more than himself. The transition from the salt-sprayed cliffs to the sterile fluorescent-lit halls of the federal building was a blur of adrenaline and cold calculation. Dominic didn't just walk into the lion's den, he brought the cage with him. With the digital drive Elisa had given him clutched in his hand, he bypassed the local precinct, where he knew the Moretti family's reach was longest, and surrendered directly to the United States Attorney's Office. But the resolution wasn't going to be a simple signing of papers. As Dominic sat in a secure briefing room, the door was kicked open by the one man who had the most to lose, Arthur Shelby Holloway. Arthur didn't look like the polished fixer anymore. His eyes were bloodshot, his movements erratic. He had escaped custody during a transport shuffle and somehow he had breached the federal perimeter. In his hand was a suppressed pistol, and in his eyes was the desperation of a man who knew his brother was about to bury him to save a soul he didn't believe Dominic possessed. "You're going to give me that drive, Dom," Arthur hissed, the weapon trembling. "I'm not going to spend the rest of my life in a cage because you suddenly decided to play the martyr for a woman who hates you." Dominic stood up slowly. He didn't feel the paralyzing fear he'd felt in the holding cell. He felt a strange, detached clarity. This was the confrontation with the antagonist, the dark mirror of who he used to be. "I'm not doing this for her, Arthur," Dominic said, his voice steady. "I'm doing it for the truth. You forged those soil reports. You ordered the hit on the union boss. I let it happen because I was too busy looking at the bottom line. But that stops today. I'll kill you," Arthur threatened, stepping closer. "I'll kill you and take the drive to the Morettis. They'll get me out of the country." "Then do it," Dominic challenged, stepping into the line of fire. "Because if you don't, I'm walking into that courtroom and telling them everything. Every bribe, every shadow, every lie we ever told." The tension in the room was a living thing, thick enough to choke. Outside, the sirens of the responding tactical teams wailed, a countdown to the end of the Toretto Corleone era. In a final, desperate move, Arthur lunged for the drive. Dominic met him halfway, using the raw, unpolished strength of his youth. They crashed into the table, the drive skittering across the floor. As they struggled, the most surprising twist of the night revealed itself. The door behind them opened, but it wasn't the police. It was Cobb Miller-Ross, the foreman. But he wasn't there to help Arthur. He was wearing a wire, flanked by federal agents who had been monitoring the room the entire time. "It's over, Arthur," Cobb said, his voice heavy with regret. "I told them everything. About the steal, about the payoffs. Everything." Arthur froze, the realization of his total defeat crashing down. He dropped the weapon, his knees hitting the floor in a mirror image of Dominic's earlier surrender. The blacklist was no longer a threat. It was a confession. Dominic picked up the drive and handed it to the lead investigator. He didn't ask for a plea deal. He didn't ask for immunity. He simply looked at the camera in the corner of the room, knowing Elisa was likely watching the feed from her secure location. He straightened his posture, showing a version of himself that was heroic not because of power, but because of his willingness to face justice. "Take it," Dominic said. "All of it. Clear the Skywalker name. Whatever happens to me, make sure the truth is what's left standing." The relief that flooded through him as the agents led Arthur away was more intoxicating than any victory he had ever won in a boardroom. The empire was gone. The fortune was forfeit. But as he was led to his own processing, he saw the headline on a nearby television monitor. "Toretto Corleone shipping files for bankruptcy. CO cooperates with federal authorities to rectify safety violations." The justice was swift and the triumph was quiet, but it was absolute. He had dismantled the machine he built, and in doing so he had finally earned the right to look his wife in the eye.